The crystalline spires of the Zephyrian royal palace had weathered solar storms, asteroid showers, and 3 separate invasion attempts over the past millennium. None of those catastrophes, however, had prepared the ancient structure for the lung capacity of one 17-hour-old Princess Lyreley. "Your Majesty, perhaps we should consider relocating to the emergency bunker," suggested Chief Medical Officer Vexter, his usually steady hands trembling as he adjusted his quantum stethoscope for the 14th time that morning. "The acoustic resonance is threatening to crack the palace's tertiary support crystals." Queen Seraphina paused in her relentless pacing, her elongated ears twitching with a mixture of maternal distress and royal frustration. The infant's wails echoed through the nursery's bioluminescent walls, each cry seeming to grow more powerful than the last. "My daughter is not a siege weapon, Doctor." "Of course not, Your Majesty. Though I must note that her decibel output is approaching that of a Class C plasma cannon." The Queen's silver eyes flashed dangerously. "Are you suggesting my child is defective?" "Not defective." Vexter backpedaled frantically, his 3-chambered heart racing. "Simply, exceptionally vocal. Perhaps we could try the Andromedan Harmony crystals again. We tried those 6 hours ago. They shattered." The Centaurian lullaby synthesizer overloaded and caught fire. The traditional Zephyrian birthing songs made her cry harder. Palace Guard Captain Zexrin shifted uncomfortably near the door, his ceremonial plasma rifle looking increasingly inadequate against their current threat. He'd faced down interdimensional pirates and rogue AI collectives without breaking a sweat, but this tiny, furious bundle of royal DNA was testing every limit of his professional composure. "Captain," the Queen called suddenly, desperation creeping into her usually composed voice. "You've served this palace for 30 years. Surely you've encountered crying infants before." Zexrin straightened, grateful for any chance to be useful. "Well, Your Majesty, my sister had younglings, and when they cried, she used to." Princess Lyreley's next wail could have shattered diamond. "Never mind," he finished weakly. "Doctor." Vexter consulted his hollow tablet with increasingly frantic swipes. "I've reviewed every case study in the Galactic medical database. Infant distress patterns, genetic anomalies, atmospheric pressure variations, even theoretical quantum entanglement with parallel dimension crying babies. Nothing explains this level of sustained vocal expression. In my day," wheezed Elder Counselor Kithara from her hoverchair, "we simply gave crying younglings some fermented kelp extract." "Mother, that's illegal in 47 star systems," the Queen replied through gritted teeth. "Which is why it worked." The medical team exchanged increasingly desperate glances. Junior physician Nexel suggested experimental sonic dampeners. The royal nutritionist wondered aloud about adjusting the infant's molecular formula. The court astrologist blamed Mercury being in retrograde, which earned him several withering looks since Mercury had been obliterated during the great solar expansion of 2387. "Your Majesty," ventured Communications Director Hexvin, poking his head nervously through the doorway. "The Galactic News Network is requesting a statement about the unusual acoustic phenomena emanating from the palace. They're speculating about everything from sonic weapons testing to a karaoke contest gone wrong." Queen Seraphina's ears flattened against her skull. "Tell them it's scheduled maintenance on the atmospheric processors." "I already did, Your Majesty, 16 hours ago." "Then tell them it's extensive maintenance." Princess Lyreley chose that moment to demonstrate that her previous efforts had merely been warm-up exercises. The new cry achieved frequencies that made several nearby data crystals emit sympathetic harmonics. "Perhaps," suggested Palace Operations Manager Trixon, with the desperate optimism of someone who'd been awake for 23 hours straight, "we should try everything. Every person in the palace, even the maintenance staff." Dr. Vexter looked scandalized. "Untrained personnel handling the royal air? Absolutely not. The liability insurance alone would bankrupt 3 systems." At this point, Queen Seraphina said quietly, her voice carrying the weight of absolute authority and complete exhaustion, I would let a Plutonian garbage collector try if they thought they could help. Well, Trixon said slowly, there is that human technician who's been working on the atmospheric processors in Level 7. He's been here 3 years, clean security record, and yesterday he mentioned something about having 11 younger siblings back on Earth. The room fell silent except for Princess Lyralay's continued protests against existence itself. A human. Dr. Vexter looked appalled. Your Majesty, humans are barely evolved beyond their primitive planetary origins. Their infant care techniques are rudimentary at best. Their atmospheric processor repair techniques seemed adequate, the Queen replied dryly. But Your Majesty, protocol clearly states. Doctor, Queen Seraphina interrupted, her voice carrying the crystalline authority that had negotiated peace treaties and commanded fleets. At this point, protocol can take a long walk through a short airlock. Marcus Chen was elbow-deep in the guts of Atmospheric Processor Unit 7 Delta when his comm unit crackled to life with a sound that made him jump and nearly short-circuit the plasma coupling he'd been delicately adjusting. Technician Chen, report to the Royal Nursery immediately. Marcus stared at the comm unit as if it had just announced the heat death of the universe. In 3 years of fixing things that kept the palace from becoming a very expensive tomb floating in space, he'd never been summoned anywhere above level 5. The Royal Nursery was on level 23. That was practically a different planet. This is Chen. Could you repeat that? I think my comm unit might be malfunctioning. Royal Nursery, now bring your toolkit. My toolkit. Are the baby's life support systems failing? Panic crept into his voice. Because I should probably mention that my expertise is in atmospheric regulation, not infant life support. Very different skill sets. One involves gas mixtures. The other involves tiny humans who can't tell you what's wrong. Just get up here, Chen. 20 minutes later, Marcus stood outside the Royal Nursery clutching his sonic wrench and trying to figure out if he was supposed to bow, salute, or just apologize preemptively for whatever he was about to break. The sound emanating from beyond the ornate biosteel doors could have doubled as a siren warning of incoming asteroid strikes. Palace Operations Manager Trixon appeared beside him, looking like someone who'd been surviving on Stimcaf and desperation for several days. Chen, thank the 7 moons, you're our last hope. I really think there's been a mistake. I fix air recyclers, not whatever that sound is. That sound is Princess Lyralay expressing her displeasure with existence. She's been at it for 17 hours straight. The medical team has tried everything in their considerable arsenal, and now they're willing to try everything not in their arsenal, including you. Marcus adjusted his grease-stained jumpsuit self-consciously. I'm flattered by the confidence, but I should point out that my infant care experience consists mainly of helping my mom with my youngest sister when I was 12. And she turned out, well, let's just say she's currently banned from 3 space stations and a moon. At this point, we take help from a Neptunian slime merchant if they claim to know about babies. The nursery doors slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a scene that looked like the aftermath of a very polite battle. Medical equipment hummed and beeped in complex harmonies, trying valiantly to compete with the acoustic assault coming from the floating cradle in the center of the room. The assembled crowd of Zephyrian nobles, medical staff, and guards turned toward Marcus with expressions ranging from desperate hope to polite skepticism. Queen Seraphina stood beside the cradle, her elongated ears pressed almost flat against her head in what Marcus's limited xenobiology knowledge suggested was either extreme stress or preparation for flight. Her silver eyes met his, and he was struck by how exhausted she looked despite her regal composure. Your Majesty, he said, attempting what he hoped was an appropriate bow while holding a sonic wrench. I'm Marcus Chen, atmospheric technician, 3rd class. I understand you're having some technical difficulties. "Mr. Chen," the Queen replied, her voice carrying just a hint of desperate humor, "unless you can reprogram my daughter's vocal subroutines, I'm not sure this qualifies as a technical problem." "Well," Marcus said, edging closer to the cradle and raising his voice over Princess Lyralay's continued protests. "In my experience, most technical problems boil down to something not getting what it needs to function properly. Usually it's power, proper ventilation, or someone forgot to turn something on." Dr. Vexter looked scandalized. "This is a biological entity, not a machine." "Right, but the basic troubleshooting principles might still apply. Has anyone tried asking her what's wrong?" The medical team exchanged glances that suggested Marcus had just proposed communicating via interpretive dance. "Mr. Chen, doctor," Vexter said with strained patience, "infants cannot verbally communicate their needs." "No, but they can communicate. Just not in words. Back home, my mom always said crying was a baby's way of filing a complaint with customer service. You just had to figure out which department to transfer them to." Queen Seraphina's ears twitched forward slightly, the first sign of interest she'd shown in hours. "Customer service. Sure, hungry baby gets transferred to food services. Sleepy baby goes to environmental controls for lighting and temperature adjustment. Uncomfortable baby needs maintenance to check for equipment malfunctions. And if none of those departments can resolve the complaint?" the Queen asked. Marcus grinned, his nervousness momentarily forgotten. "Then you escalate to management. That's usually the mom or dad picking them up and just being there until the problem sorts itself out." The room fell unusually quiet except for Princess Lyralay's continued vocal exercises. Marcus realized everyone was staring at him, with expressions he couldn't quite read. "I mean," he added hastily, "that's just how it worked in my family. Zephyrian babies might have completely different customer service protocols." "Actually," the Queen said softly, "that might be the most sensible thing anyone has said in the past 17 hours. "So," Marcus said, approaching the hovering cradle with the careful deliberation of someone defusing a quantum bomb, "let's start with basic troubleshooting. Has anyone checked if she's hungry?" "Doctor," Vexter's three-chambered heart nearly stopped. "Mr. Chen, you cannot simply reach into the royal cradle without proper sterilization protocols, biorhythm synchronization, and at least 6 forms of medical clearance." "Right," Marcus said, pausing mid-reach. "How long does that usually take?" "Approximately 4 hours. Princess Lyralay chose that moment to demonstrate that her previous efforts had been merely practice runs. The new whale achieved such pitch perfection that several nearby data crystals began resonating in harmony. Or," Marcus continued conversationally, "I could just wash my hands really well and see what happens." Queen Seraphina stepped forward before Dr. Vexter could launch into what was clearly going to be a lengthy lecture about proper medical protocols. "Mr. Chen, at this point, I'm willing to waive standard procedures. Proceed." "Your Majesty, I must protest." "Noted and overruled, Doctor." Marcus activated the sonic sterilizer mounted beside the cradle, watching the blue energy field engulf his hands with obvious fascination. "You know, we could really use these in the maintenance bays. Do you have any idea how hard it is to get plasma residue out from under your fingernails?" "Focus, Chen," Trixon muttered. "Right, baby, customer service." Marcus leaned over the cradle, getting his first clear look at Princess Lyralay. Despite the volume of her complaints, she was undeniably beautiful, tiny features that were clearly going to develop into her mother's elegant bone structure, and ears that already showed the characteristic Zephyrian elongation. "Hello there, Your Highness. I hear you've been having some technical difficulties." The baby's crying paused for exactly 2 seconds, as if she was processing this new voice, then resumed with renewed vigor. "Okay, not hungry then. Let's try environmental controls." Marcus glanced around the nursery, noting the soft bioluminescent lighting, the perfectly controlled atmosphere, the gentle circulation of ionized air. Everything looks optimal here, but sometimes optimal isn't what you need. My little sister used to hate sleeping when everything was too perfect. Said it was boring. Boring? Queen Seraphina asked. Yeah, no variety. No interesting sounds or movement. Just sterile perfection. Marcus reached into the cradle, his calloused hands looking impossibly rough against the silky smoothness of Zephyrian baby blankets. Sometimes babies need a little chaos to feel secure. Dr. Vexter made a strangled sound. You're handling the heir to the galactic throne with unwashed. Sonically sterilized, Marcus corrected, carefully lifting Princess Lyreley from her cradle. The moment his hands made contact, something extraordinary happened. The crying stopped. Not gradually, not with a few lingering sobs. It simply stopped as if someone had flipped a switch marked Royal Baby Volume Control. The silence that followed was so profound that Marcus could hear the hum of the palace's quantum processors 3 levels down. Did she just stop? Captain Zexrin whispered, afraid that speaking too loudly might break whatever spell had been cast. Princess Lyreley gazed up at Marcus with wide, alert eyes that held an intelligence far beyond her 17 hours of existence. She made a soft cooing sound, reached up with one tiny hand, and grabbed his finger with a grip that suggested she had no intention of letting go. Well, Marcus said, automatically beginning a gentle swaying motion that seemed to come from somewhere. The assembled crowd stared in stunned silence. Dr. Vexter began frantically scanning both human and infant with every medical device at his disposal, muttering about impossible biological interactions and interspecies infant behavioral anomalies. How? Queen Seraphina asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Marcus shrugged, still swaying gently as Princess Lyreley continued her careful examination of his face. My grandmother used to say that babies can sense when someone's genuinely trying to help versus when someone's just following a manual. Maybe Zephyrian babies have the same instincts. But the physiological incompatibility alone should prevent, Dr. Vexter began. Doctor, the Queen interrupted, I don't care if he's violating every law of xenobiology. It's working. Princess Lyreley made another contented sound and settled more comfortably in Marcus's arms, apparently deciding that this strange human with the rough hands and gentle voice was exactly what she'd been waiting for. So, Marcus said, looking around the room of stunned nobles and medical professionals, I guess my customer service approach worked. Though I should probably mention that I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing beyond this point. Neither do we, Queen Seraphina admitted, her ears finally relaxing from their pressed-back position of stress. But you're the first person in 17 hours who's managed to make her happy. Great, Marcus said with a grin. No pressure then. Princess Lyreley gurgled happily, as if she was laughing at a joke only she understood. 3 days later, Marcus found himself in the surreal position of being the only person in the known galaxy who could successfully negotiate with Princess Lyreley. What had started as emergency baby whispering had evolved into something the palace staff were calling essential personnel duties, which sounded much more official than the human who prevents the heir from achieving sonic weapon status. Mr. Chen, Palace Operations Manager Trixon announced during what had become their daily morning briefing, your new security clearance has been approved. You now have access to levels 15 through 25, the Royal Kitchen replicators, and emergency override protocols for the nursery's sound-dampening fields. Marcus paused in his gentle bouncing of Princess Lyreley, who had taken to regarding him with the satisfied expression of someone who'd finally trained their staff properly. I need emergency override protocols. Yesterday you mentioned that she might enjoy hearing real sounds from the palace's daily operations. The acoustics team nearly had a collective breakdown. I just thought she might like hearing people actually living their lives instead of the sterile hum of life support systems. Back on Earth, babies fall asleep to all kinds of background noise, traffic, neighbors arguing, construction work. Queen Seraphina entered the nursery carrying what appeared to be a data pad and wearing an expression Marcus had learned to recognize as royal amusement attempting to disguise itself as royal dignity. "Your Majesty," Marcus said, attempting a bow while holding a baby who had strong opinions about sudden movement changes. "Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Chen. I trust Princess Lyrelay slept well." Like a log. A very small, occasionally vocal log that requires feeding every 3 hours and has strong preferences about which atmospheric processor hums she finds soothing. Dr. Vexter, who had taken to following Marcus around with increasingly sophisticated monitoring equipment, made notes on his medical scanner. "The infant's biorhythms have stabilized completely since Mr. Chen began his unconventional care protocols. Her neural development patterns are actually exceeding expected parameters." "Which means?" the Queen asked. "She's getting smarter faster than normal, probably because she's finally getting proper rest. Though I still cannot explain the physiological mechanism by which a human male can achieve maternal bonding responses in a Zephyrian infant." Marcus shifted Princess Lyrelay to his other arm, where she immediately began her systematic destruction of his jumpsuit's pocket flap. "Maybe it's not about the species. Maybe it's about the approach. I mean, I'm not trying to be her parent or her doctor. I'm just trying to be her friend." "Friend?" Queen Seraphina's ears tilted forward with interest. "Sure. I talk to her like she's a person, not a problem to be solved. Tell her about my day. Explain what I'm doing when I'm working on the atmospheric processors. Yesterday, I spent 20 minutes describing the molecular structure of plasma coolant because she seemed interested. And she responds to this. She's a great listener, very attentive, though she did fall asleep during the technical specifications for tertiary circulation systems." Captain Zexrin appeared in the doorway, his expression suggesting he was bearing news of either great importance or great confusion. "Your Majesty, we have a situation. The Galactic News Network is requesting an interview about the palace's mysterious acoustic phenomena resolution. Apparently, word has spread that we've solved our technical difficulties." "What kind of word?" the Queen asked with the weary tone of someone who dealt with galactic media before. "The kind that involves speculation about secret weapons, alien technology, and something called the human baby whisperer of Zephyra Prime." Marcus nearly dropped Princess Lyrelay. "They what now?" "There's apparently a betting pool across 17 star systems about whether you're using psychic powers, advanced Earth technology, or some kind of interspecies telepathic link. I'm using the ancient human technique of paying attention and not overthinking everything," Marcus protested. Princess Lyrelay chose that moment to demonstrate her approval by grabbing Marcus's finger and making what could only be described as a baby laugh, a sound that had every adult in the room smiling despite the brewing media crisis. "The good news," Captain Zexrin continued, "is that 3 different universities have offered research grants to study your methods. The bad news is that someone started a conspiracy theory that you're actually an undercover Earth diplomat sent to infiltrate the royal family through infant manipulation." "That's ridiculous," Marcus said. "If Earth had infant manipulation technology, don't you think we would have used it to solve our own problems first?" Queen Seraphina's ears were definitely in their amused position now. "What do you suggest we do about this media attention, Mr. Chen?" Marcus considered this while Princess Lyrelay began her systematic exploration of his tool belt, apparently fascinated by the sonic calibrator. "Well, we could hold a press conference where I demonstrate my mysterious powers by changing a diaper and explaining that babies mostly just want someone to take them seriously." "That might actually work," Trixon mused. "Revolutionary in its simplicity. Or," Marcus added with a grin, "we could let them keep guessing. I kind of like being mysteriously powerful for once in my life." Princess Lyrelay gurgled approvingly, as if she was already planning her media strategy. 6 weeks had passed since Marcus Chen had accidentally become the most famous atmospheric technician in galactic history, and he was discovering that fame came with complications he'd never considered, like being summoned to emergency diplomatic meetings while covered in baby drool and carrying a sonic wrench. "Mr. Chen," Queen Seraphina said as he entered the royal conference chamber where Princess Lyrelei was holding court from her portable hover cradle, "we have a situation that requires your unique perspective. If it involves fixing something that's broken, I'm your guy. If it involves interstellar politics, you might want to double-check that you summoned the right person. Unfortunately, it involves both." Ambassador Krelix from the Centauri Federation materialized via holotransmission, his multiple eye stalks focusing on Marcus with obvious skepticism. "This is your expert advisor, a maintenance worker." "This maintenance worker," Queen Seraphina replied with dangerous calm, "has accomplished something our most advanced medical and scientific teams could not. Perhaps the Federation should consider the value of unconventional solutions." Princess Lyrelei made a happy gurgling sound and reached for Marcus, who automatically moved to lift her from the cradle. The moment she settled in his arms, she began what Marcus had learned was her serious listening pose, alert, quiet, and somehow giving the impression that she was taking notes. "The situation," the Queen continued, "is that 3 separate trade delegations have threatened to withdraw from the Zephyrian Economic Alliance unless we share the advanced human infant care technology that's supposedly behind Princess Lyrelei's remarkable development." Marcus blinked. What advanced technology? Exactly the problem. They refused to believe that simple human intuition and attention could produce such results. "The Rigelian Collective is convinced you're using some form of quantum empathy device. The Andromedan Council thinks you've developed a new form of bioneural interface. The Centauri Federation believes you're part of a secret Earth experiment in interspecies manipulation. And what do you believe, Your Majesty?" Queen Seraphina's silver eyes met his, and Marcus felt that familiar flutter he'd been trying to ignore for weeks. "I believe you're exactly what you appear to be, someone who cares more about solving problems than following protocols." Ambassador Krelix's eye stalks writhed impatiently. "Your Majesty, with respect, the Federation requires concrete evidence of these technological capabilities, or we must assume Zephyra is deliberately withholding strategic advantages from its allies." Princess Lyrelei chose that moment to demonstrate her own diplomatic skills by making a sound that could have been interpreted as either a baby laugh or a very polite raspberry in the ambassador's general direction. "Ambassador," Marcus said, gently bouncing the princess, "what if I told you that the most advanced technology I use is asking questions and paying attention to the answers? That's not technology, that's basic cognition." "Exactly. But somehow, in all our rush to develop quantum computers and faster-than-light communication and molecular replicators, a lot of species seem to have forgotten that basic cognition is the foundation everything else is built on." Queen Seraphina stepped closer, her elongated ears tilted forward with interest. "Continue. Look at how we solved Princess Lyrelei's crying problem. Your medical team tried every advanced technique in their arsenal, but they forgot to ask the simplest question. What does she actually need? They were so focused on applying complex solutions that they missed the obvious ones. And you believe this applies to interstellar diplomacy?" Ambassador Krelix asked with barely concealed condescension. "Why not? You're all afraid that Zephyra is hiding some secret advantage, right? But what if the real advantage is just remembering that behind all the technology and politics and protocol, we're all trying to take care of our families and communities? What if the solution to your trade disputes is the same as the solution to a crying baby, figuring out what everyone actually needs instead of what they think they want?" Princess Lyrelei made an approving sound and grabbed Marcus's finger with her usual determination, as if sealing a deal. The conference chamber fell silent except for the gentle hum of life support systems and the princess's contented breathing. "Ambassador," Queen Seraphina said finally, Mr. Chen raises an interesting point. Perhaps instead of demanding technology transfers, we should focus on understanding why our current trade agreements aren't meeting everyone's actual needs. 3 hours later, after the most unconventional diplomatic session in galactic history, one that involved Marcus explaining atmospheric processor maintenance principles, while Princess Lyrelei provided commentary and Queen Seraphina translated both technical concepts and baby noises into formal diplomatic language. They had the framework for a completely restructured trade alliance based on genuine resource sharing rather than competitive advantage hoarding. Mr. Chen, Ambassador Krelix said as his hollow transmission prepared to terminate, the Federation would like to offer you a position as a diplomatic consultant. Thanks, but I think I'll stick with atmospheric processors. They're more predictable than politics, and considerably less dangerous, Queen Seraphina added with amusement. As the various ambassadors and advisors filed out of the conference chamber, Marcus found himself alone with the Queen and Princess Lyrelei, who had fallen asleep in his arms with the satisfied expression of someone who'd successfully managed her first international incident. So, Marcus said quietly, I guess this means I'm permanently assigned to royal baby duty. Would you mind? Marcus looked down at Princess Lyrelei, then up at Queen Seraphina, whose silver eyes held warmth that had nothing to do with her royal status and everything to do with the woman who'd learned to trust a grease-stained technician with her most precious treasure. Actually, he said with a grin, I think I'm starting to like the benefits package. Princess Lyrelei made a sleepy sound that could have been agreement or possibly just gas, but in Marcus's expert opinion, it sounded exactly like approval.